human beings, we are talking about how to extend your vocal range. Yay! Let's define our terms. Vocal range is the lowest and highest note that you can possibly sing in your life. You can affect this. Think about any other muscle in your body. You can always work on flexibility and increasing range of motion. So, yay! Most of your vocal extension is going to be working on getting to higher pitches rather than lower pitches. This is primarily because we have more potential and capacity in upwards extension than downwards extension. Let's break that down and let's analyze that. So, unlike a guitar, where you have a string, and if you kind of plink it in the middle and you halve it, it'll go up the octave, so shorter strings, higher pitch. Your vocal folds are the exact opposite, meaning that when your vocal folds shorten and thicken, the pitch goes down. Which is why you might, as you go down, you might feel like you are relaxing muscularly, because you are. And as you go up, you might feel like you're tensing, because you are. Yay, anatomy. So in order to go up in pitch, our vocal folds need to stretch. This is a lower pitch. Kind of like that. I'm just going to stretch out. From this, you might be able to infer that you have more potential to stretch/tense a muscle and less potential to relax it. For the sake of this video, I'm going to assume for now that you can get into your head voice. So you can get into that kind of thing. Mickey Mouse voice, the weird people talking to babies or people talking to their pets. Because they're super freaking cute. Not the babies, but the pets. Anyway, preferences. Woo! So I'm going to make this assumption. This might be a massive assumption. If you can't get into your head voice, look at the video on chest voice and head voice and how to access that. If you can get into head voice, this video is for you. So in order to extend your range further, we need to get you into the upper extensions of your head voice and maybe even your whistle register, depending on how high you want to go and what you want to do. We're going to get the following exercise. If you've seen the Fry tutorials, you know this exercise. Diminished chord, wee, 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 W-E, wee, 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 squeaky, etc. It's in the warm-ups. It's in the warm-up video, the overall warm-up. Let's break down this exercise though. What is this exercise doing? So the way that I would want you to do this exercise is I would want you to keep the sound very light, very squeaky, very small, very quiet. And I personally would want you to be on a high larynx. You can do this exercise on a low larynx or on a neutral laryngeal position, but then you're working on your agility around this exercise and the tonal quality of the exercise. You're not working on your upper extension of your range the way that I want you to, work on it. So let's break it down. Okay. We're using a W so that your mouth doesn't splat open. For some reason, human beings have a tendency to want to open their mouth more for higher notes. This usually makes higher notes much, much harder to sing. Big mouth means more air coming out. more air coming out might sometimes mean very slightly higher breath pressure. It is very difficult for your vocal folds to resist breath pressure when we get so high and they're so freaking thin and tiny and delicate. They just get blown apart by the wind. So yay, which takes us nicely into less air for high notes. Less is more. Yay. We're talking very high notes here. But anyway, whatever. So W keeps your mouth nice and tidy. The E vowel is going to lift your tongue so that your tongue doesn't squidge down, push, and do weird stuff. We have a tendency, again, to gravitate towards an ah when we get really high. Depending on how high you are, it helps. If you get very high, it doesn't help anymore. So get the tongue high, get it relatively relaxed. We're just trying to not engage the tongue as much and not keep it as low. We also want the tongue to lift up so that your larynx can be pretty damn high. Remember, this is a high larynx exercise. We want the sound to be small and quiet. This is so that you don't use air in order to blast and get to the higher notes. No, that's cheating. We want you to stretch the vocal folds. Get to the high notes because you stretched, not because you blasted things with air. It might make it harder, but that's the whole point, right? If an exercise is harder, that's probably a good sign. That's what you want to practice. High larynx. I personally want your larynx to be high because when we ascend in pitch, our larynx lifts slightly. For all you classical nerds out there that do classical singing and are really, really well trained in maintaining a low larynx and all that kind of stuff, it's still lifting, guys. It's just lifting less than in the average populace. You can't, if your larynx stays jammed down, you have a medical problem. But anyway, the larynx lifts as we ascend in pitch, and there tends to be a habitual relationship with the larynx lifting and helping us get higher notes. So what I want to do is I want you to hike up the larynx. You do that by making it squeaky. Yeah. That's why the squeak is important. The squeak is the sound of the lifting of the larynx. If you're not sure whether you're doing it right, stick your tongue out. It should still be squeaky. Because a lot of people do very interesting movements with their tongue to make it sound squeaky. That's not the move. Lift the larynx up. If you really can't lift your larynx, swallow at the top of your swallow. That's the sensation. So almost a little bit choky. The more you do it, and the longer you sing on a high larynx and you stay on a high larynx, you'll lose that choky feeling. It will get really relaxed and very comfortable. You won't even know you're on a high larynx. So don't worry about that. You'll get used to it with time. When your larynx is lifted, you now can't lift the larynx more. So you're not going to go higher to help you get those higher notes. So we've, in a way, disabled as many cheats as possible within this exercise. That's the idea and the goal of this exercise. Is what do people usually do? They splat the mouth open, do weird things with their tongue, use volume and more breath pressure to get to higher notes, and lift the larynx incrementally as they go up. Great. W, keep the mouth small. E, keep the tongue in a relatively lifted, relaxed position. Make the sound small and quiet. Keep the larynx super high the entire time. Now we are working with a vocal fold stretch. You'll feel it. If you go high enough, you can feel the stretch. As weird as this may sound, within this exercise, if you experience a little bit of discomfort or it feels really strange, I want you to think that the equivalent activity is doing the splits with your legs. If you've ever tried to learn the splits, or you've ever just, even in passing, like opened as wide as you can, you'll know that when you open and you're at about maximum opening, you feel a pull, you feel a stretch, you might even feel discomfort, you might even feel pain. It kind of goes together with going to the edge of your range of motion. So don't necessarily panic, take breaks, do everything in a really lazy way, but just be aware that you might feel this one a lot, all of these ones. Second exercise, whistle register on an inhalation. So you're going to pick a really high note. Ideally, I would love it to be an octave above your highest note. So the highest note you could possibly sing, go an octave higher, or almost an octave higher. So we want to be like really high. And then you are going to try and reach that pitch whilst inhaling. It's going to be really quiet and tiny and weird. Now, things about inhaling. Number one, inhales are not bad for you. There's no research that backs that up or indicates it. If anything, we have quite an interesting amount of research that indicates that inhales can be good for you. But anyway, putting that out there. Second thing around inhales, they're weird. You might not be used to doing them. They're fun. And this is part of the thing. We want to get your brain using your body in very different ways, and in ways that are very unfamiliar if you want to extend your range. For now, we're just looking for a microscopic noise. A microscopic noise is the goal. It's not that I played a note and I'm trying to match that note. Ignore accuracy. Take your accuracy, throw it out the window. We do not care about accuracy on inhales for now. Unless you get really into inhales, in which case, oh my goodness, go for it. It's a fabulous world. But for now, we just want you to make a noise, because what we want is we want your body to try and experience how far it can stretch. If you can stretch really high, your vocal folds can go that high. Ignore for now that you don't maybe know how the hell to do that on an exhalation. If you can do it on an inhale, you can do it on an exhale. Woo! Rules of thumb around your inhales. They're going to be small. They're going to be quiet for now, especially when we're looking at really high notes. The more air you inhale, the more likely it is that the pitch will drop and go down. This is also true in your exhalations, and you can actually discover this, but don't play around with it too much. I wouldn't recommend it. Point is, if you want to get extremely high, less air. Really, less air. If you've been playing around with your fry and your fry screams, even less air than your fry. If you're good at your fry, your brain is probably imploding right now. And you're like, what do you mean even less? How could it be even less? As a measure, let's put it this way. Whether you are accessing your whistle notes on an inhale or an exhale, I want you to not be able to feel that you are inhaling or exhaling that little air. So little air that you cannot feel any air entering the system or leaving the system. Yi. That's your target. Putting this out there is a weird thing. You can do inhales. You can inhale through your mouth. Or you can inhale through your nose. There's no reason to keep your mouth open. I mention this because some people find it easier to inhale smaller amounts of air through their nose than they do their mouth. That's the same thing, it doesn't matter. But play around with that. The goal is to allow your vocal folds to try and stretch that much higher. Because once you feel a stretch that high, trying to stretch lower down is a little bit easier. Extending your vocal range is a long, laborious process, and it is non-linear. It is really non-linear. Like, an extremely common thing is that you'll do this for like 6 months or a year with zero improvement, and then suddenly you wake up one day and your voice is like, here's an additional fifth. And you're like, what the hell? Why? So it's really disheartening because you have to stick to it. You have to practice this very systematically and frequently. And you won't necessarily see a linear progression, which means there's nothing to motivate you to keep practicing this. So, like, brace yourself for a potentially tougher time psychologically than with other vocal techniques, where maybe you progress massively, or maybe you see at least a little bit of change and difference. This one can be very slow. So just putting that out there. A third option is fry. Some people can actually go higher in fry than they can clean. If you've unlocked your high fries, see how high those can go. Really, really test and see if they can go higher than your cleans. For some people they can. If they can go higher than your cleans, it's a matter of going up there and then increasing the breath pressure to clean it up. Much like you would with your distortion and your cleans. If your fry gets stuck exactly where your highs end, I would say practice your cleans and your fries in the same zone. Like, just play around with different vibratory mechanisms up there. If your fry is much lower and gets stuck much lower down, that's probably the area where you might want to start working on the quality of your cleans, whether you can make them quieter, gentler, softer, lighter, just less effort, less muscle, less force, less everything. So try and work your fry up anyway. It will inform things. When you're playing around with that, once you get used to it, play around with, start descending, always start descending, but then descend and ascend. Practice both descending and ascending. Switch the vowel around. Like, add a hypothetical oo, add a hypothetical e, ah, whatever. It might not sound different because we are so high up that physics has kind of left vowel intelligibility. So, like, that's not really an option, but you'll feel a difference, or you might feel a difference, and you might prefer some vowels and not like other vowels. Practice all your vowels. And then the final thing is practice on an NG. Like, all through your nose, with less pressure on the system. NGs are amazing. For some people, they can go much higher on an NG. And for other people, they can't even get to the top of the normal range on an NG. Practice your NG. It's a very different pressure balance and dynamic than your vowels. And it's very useful. And it has a very interesting potential to take you very high in your range. So that would be my initial advice for extending your range upwards. In order to extend your range downwards, it's a little bit more simple and we don't have as much information. You would want to sing clean. You would want to sing breathy. You might be able to get lower if you're breathy. And you would want to use fry. Once you dip into solid fry, there are ways to make your fry more solid, more interesting, like sound cooler, etc. But fundamentally, that's not extending your clean range. And at the moment, we're just talking about extending your clean range. But regardless, whether you're going up or down, fry is useful. Let me know if you have ideas or things that worked for you in the past about extending your range upwards, because it's a very interesting topic. And there's not loads of literature on the subject. It doesn't, for some reason, it doesn't seem to be something that deeply concerns researchers. I don't know why. But anyway, so let me know what exercises have worked for you and let me know what questions you might have around extending your range. Yay! Any questions, leave them in the comments below. I will answer everything. That is all for now.